Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What is happening, guys? Hope everyone is safe and well. Thanks for checking out our review. For this one, Duncan and I have been checking out the new release from Avant-Garde metal band Imperial Triumphant. The band's fourth album, Alphaville, will be released on July 31st via Century Media Records. So, Duncan, Alphaville.
Yep. What I love about this, Dave, before you get into full swing, is the guy who does the PR for this was like that. It's weird, but if you listen to it, you'll like it. And we were like, okay, yeah, it's an interesting pitch. And I will tell you this, Dave, not want to spoil things. It's weird, but after listening to it twice, I kind of like it. So
It's not an album I can imagine listening to before going to bed. Let's say that.
No.
Not unless you want this band to haunt your dreams. Avant-garde metal. It's not going to be a genre for everyone. Let's just say that. Even the fans of the techiest of metal might find this album a bit of a colossal headfuck to listen to. I wasn't familiar with the band at all, so I want to go back and check out a wee bit of their back catalogue. So I jumped back to their previous album, Vile Luxury from 2018, just to kind of get an idea of where this band were coming from and to see what kind of changes they made between then and now. I have to say, Vile Luxury was definitely more brass heavy, and it weirdly almost made this band sound more digestible. It was like John Coltrane and Miles Davis jamming with Gorguts. That's like how I would kind of describe it. I think the main thing I picked up though was that this isn't a band that's going to just phone it in on each album. You're going to get your money's worth with Imperial Triumphant. And probably a little extra, to be honest. Alphaville is the band's fourth album, and it's definitely not another Vile Luxury. Musically it's completely batshit crazy, but overall it's a more vast experimental album, and you can hear that like from the get-go on Rotted Futures. The kind of horn section that featured so prominently on Vile Luxury, it is there on the album, but it's virtually kind of non-existent, to be honest. Although the album still very much has that kind of disjointed jazz vibe, but it feels like they've like kind of channeled it through their core instruments rather than rely on like a brass section, which, to be honest, it sounds more jaw-dropping musically, but it's probably harder to absorb as a listener than Vile Luxury was. Like, I found I needed multiple listens to this before I could even start to think about breaking it down and reviewing it. I mean, this thing has everything from choirs to taiko drums to synths, pianos, a freaking barbershop quartet in there, Duncan.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are not afraid to throw caution to the wind and just let their creative side kind of run wild. And by wild, I mean fucking nuts. If you're looking for like a verse, chorus, bridge type song structure, then you're in for a disappointing ride. This isn't really like a riff based album either.
No.
You won't hear like huge riffs that you'll be like humming along to like days after hearing this album. There was no real easy way to kind of approach this. I don't know if you felt the same, but I think it was something you just kind of have to take a leap into and try and keep up with the madness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I maybe have weirdly, I think I've taken to this album maybe a bit easier than you have.
Okay.
I don't know what that says about my brain at all. What I love about Imperial Triumphant, specifically on Alphaville, is the fact that they are just not afraid to just throw things against the wall and see what sticks. And I'm sure there is a specific method in that approach to, you know, the use of instrumentation or the use of like vocal choirs and stuff. I'm sure there is a very clear, you know, almost like a storyboard scenario where they're like, and this is where the choirs come in. I'm sure that's probably what there is. To me, it didn't sound like that. To me, what it sounded like was like a group of guys sitting and going, do you hear choirs? No, I kind of hear choir. Do you hear a choir over this? Yeah, I can. Let's get a fucking choir in here. You know what I mean? That's, to me, it felt like on some level there is always this backbone and core to their songwriting, and then it's just refinement over the top. And because I come from a background in music of listening to kind of industrial music being layered, it's all about layers. If you want to write industrial music, you find your melody and then you start layering as much as you can over it, and sometimes those layers become almost oppressive, and Imperial Triumphant's layering is completely oppressive. Everything they do is designed to take your brain in one direction and the other. And as someone that listens to music, I still listen to music very much the way I did when studying music, which is you break down what all the instruments are doing while you're listening, so you can pick out what the bass plays and whatnot. You can almost get like a kind of musical whiplash trying to do that, because just as you're finding the point, the kind of anchor point of what the bass is doing, out of nowhere you're hit with this completely different instrumentation that drags you off in a different direction. But what I found really, really interesting about Imperial Triumphant is not all of it works at all. Like, even remotely, there are whole sections that are so discordant and so disjointed that they actually feel like they're working at cross purposes against the music. But I can't imagine any scenario where they're not fully aware of that but do it anyway. And as a result, you get this really rich kind of tapestry of headfuckery from start to finish. And I found it like ultimately compelling every time. It's like trying to work out a Rubik's Cube but with your eyes blindfolded. You know what I mean? Like a Braille Rubik's Cube is basically Alphaville from start to finish. And it got more interesting the more I listened to it. But what I found is upon every listen, and this one's had 5 listens from me, on every listen, I come away with a completely different opinion of what I think they're trying to do in certain songs. So I'm like, this one's totally bass drum disc guitar riff. And then the next time I listen, I'm like, no, this is bass drum what the drummer's doing. And then the next time I listen to it, I'm like, no, this is totally, you know, there's a hook here that they're trying to work around and explore thematically. And each time I come away with something different, I will say this about them. I guarantee 95% of metal fans will not appreciate the hard work that this band is doing in favour of, I imagine a lot of people just think it's, jazz is really a good word to describe it. It has that kind of pure experimental nature of a proper jazz, where you'd be listening to some jazz session musicians playing and you are in the groove with them, and then all of a sudden someone decides this is the point to play, you know, fucking a minored fucking muted trumpet solo, and you're like, no, this is the wrong key, what are you doing? And they just go off and they just roll with it, because they're in the zone. And that zone might not marry up with everything else they're doing, but they're in the music and in the moment. And Alphaville is a album collection of musicians that are caught up in many moments. It's wonderfully compelling, but at the same time horribly off-putting.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what you're saying about each track. I felt like each track kind of evoked a different experience, from like the kind of discordant, kind of angular riffs and disjointed rhythms on the likes of Excelsior and City Swine. And then you get the kind of uneasy, almost kind of nightmarish qualities on Atomic Age.
Yes.
It is an album that pushed me to my limits, but at the same time, I found it weirdly fascinating. Like, I loved how they took you from something so disharmonious on Atomic Age, which to me sounded like Candiria having a seizure, straight into like Transmission to Mercury, which made you feel like you'd been transported back to like a smoky New York jazz club from the 1950s. And me describing that out loud sounds completely ridiculous, but they blend the two extremities together seamlessly, making like a chaotic barrage flow into this kind of classy jazz break as if it came totally naturally. And then you've got like the album's title track, which has this kind of trippy, again, kind of Gorguts meets car bomb like complexity to it, but it's stacked upon this like these kind of morose layers of tension. And tension is something I got from this album.
Oh yeah.
And you'll feel it a lot during this album's like it's almost like an hour long. It's something that Imperial Triumphant regularly inject into their sound, and they know when to ramp it up and they know when to kind of rein it in a little bit, although those moments they rein it in are very few and far between, to be honest. Vocally, I think it's Zachary Ezrin, I think the guy's name is. He's got quite a kind of gruff kind of sound to his voice. It was the only area of the band sound that I wasn't completely sold on.
He has a tendency, almost like a pawn shot at times, to lean into a kind of black metal style of vocals, which I don't always think fit. And then at other times, like a deeper black metal, not the kind of tinny, wispy, high pitchy, recorded in a bucket sounds, like the actual, like the kind of darker stuff. And then other bits, there is this kind of really guttural, kind of snarly sort of tone as well, which I think it's a weird choice of vocals because it works really well in parts. But see if he sang clean over this as well, it would be as weird but would work as well. That makes sense. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was trying to think there are certain sections where I'm like, vocally, I don't know if I like this. The same way that Oranssi, Pazuzu, or whatever they're called. Where I was like, I love the music, but the vocals they just don't sit right with me. There was elements of that in here where the vocals just didn't sit right with me. But then I couldn't think of the range I would want the vocals to be at to replace it, if that makes sense.
I know what you mean.
I was like, what would I do as a vocalist over this section here? I was like, I don't not do vocals. I don't know. Like it's so bizarre.
I know, but another side of that, musicianship wise, this thing is off the scale.
Oh, this virtuoso beyond.
My God, the bass playing is incredible. Like as is the drumming and the guitar work, but the bass is just felt like so audible and up front. You couldn't help but focus on it like a lot of the time. Even in amongst all the kind of chaos, you can pick it out. And that's partly down to like the phenomenal playing chops of Steve Blanco, I think the guy's name is. But it's also down to the fantastic production job, which cannot have been an easy task.
No.
The mix is spot on. Every instrument always kind of sounds present, never kind of drowned out in effects or distortion or like that. So kudos to those guys. I think it was Mr. Bungle guitarist Trey Spruance, I think his name is.
Why does that not fucking surprise me?
I know. He produced it, and then the Gorguts guitarist Colin Marston, he engineered it and co-produced it, I think. I think he actually plays a little bit on the album as well. So it's a very unique album, that's what I would say. But I think people that appreciate that kind of high level of musicianship will get a lot out of this album, and I think also those that are looking for that something different that pushes the boundaries as far as they can be possibly pushed, we'll get some out of this as well. I think the way to enjoy this is to, or for me anyway, is to listen to it repeatedly, absorb every bit of it, and try and gain an understanding of it and as you continue, you'll probably find more and more to like about it. And I found that I did over time, kind of giving this repeated listens, I kind of liked more and more each time I heard it.
Yeah, I think there is music to switch your brain off to, and Imperial Triumphant are the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It's like the musical equivalent of a kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
In fact, it's actually like the musical equivalent of an Etch-a-Sketch or a spirograph, where it just, like, the more you go around it, the more you get out of it, the more interesting the kind of picture it forms in your brain. And some of it doesn't work. I'll be honest, some of it, I more likely works for the band, did not work for me as a listener, but I could not stop listening to it once it started. I'll give them this. Their album has a couple of covers on it towards the end. Where they're like that, fuck it, we'll just... And is it Voivod? Is that how you pronounce?
Voivod.
Yeah, Voivod. They made them sound different. Well, like some bands do a cover and the cover just sounds like, you're like, why did you cover that song? You play it exactly the same. Not in this album.
No.
So you don't need to worry about that. Yeah, no. I will put it this way. Their PR guy, I hope he listens to this. Never have I heard such a kind of go and just give him a chance sort of plead from a reviewer, but at the same time 100% accurately describe the listening experience. It is a weird... You will not hear another album by another band like Imperial Triumphant this year.
Yeah.
And if you do, it's another Imperial Triumphant album. Yeah.
Yeah. You were right, Tristan.
Tristan, you got this fucking spot on, and just tell every reviewer exactly what you told Dave. It's what got us to bump up the we're like, we need to listen to this shit.
I wasn't totally sure. I mean, I'd heard one track, or maybe two tracks on as they'd released them, and I thought, I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to like this at all. Like, I wasn't totally sold on it, but he was right though. I gave it a chance, and he was totally right. So cheers for that. Rating wise,
I think we're going to have different grades.
My rating has definitely crept up more and more as I've listened to this. At the moment, I'm sitting at a 4 out of 5.
I'm the same. I'm a 4 out of 5. Confident 4 out of 5. It's not really changed, and that's even acknowledging. This is the first time I think I've ever given a 4 out where I'm acknowledging that there are some parts of this album that just don't gel with me at all, but I still 100% appreciate everything on it. So yeah, 4.
Yep, absolutely. Nice. If you want to check out Imperial Triumphant, you can find them on Facebook, facebook.com/Imperial Triumphant. And this new album, Alphaville, comes out on July 31st on Century Media Records. So be sure to check that one out. Thanks for checking out the review, guys. Until next time, take care, and we'll speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.